Someone's eyes in the window. I first noticed it a week ago. A shadow, thin, still, unwavering, standing behind the window of the house across the street. It was the old Markham place, abandoned for years, its roof sagging, windows clouded with dust, front porch half collapsed like a drunken old man leaning on his cane. No one lived there. No one had lived there since I was a kid, since old Mr. Markham hung himself in the attic, or so the stories went. But every night, when I glanced out of my own window before bed, I saw the silhouette. Not moving. Not flickering like a trick of the streetlights. Just there. Watching. At first, I tried to ignore it, told myself it was my imagination or maybe a reflection of something behind me. But that quiet, sickening itch at the base of my skull wouldn't let me. So I tested it. I turned off all the lights in my room, closed my curtains except for a tiny crack, and peeked out when I was sure no headlights or passing cars could interfere. The figure was still there, staring straight at my window. My stomach clenched. I didn't tell anyone. What could I say? Hey, I think a ghost is watching me? The guys at work already thought I was weird for living alone in a town where most people either had families or at least roommates. My mom would just use it as another excuse to tell me to go to church, and my ex, well, she'd just roll her eyes like she always did when I talked about things that weren't real. So I kept it to myself, losing sleep, waking up in a cold sweat at random hours, half expecting to see the shadow closer, maybe standing on my own porch. By the fourth night, I was cracking. My thoughts were a whirlwind of paranoia and half-baked logic. Maybe it was a squatter. Maybe some psycho who got his kicks creeping people out. Maybe someone really had moved in, though no one in town mentioned anything. But the real question wasn't who. It was why. Why just stand there? Why always at the same hour? Why only watching me? That night, something changed. I was brushing my teeth when I caught the movement in the corner of my eye. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slowly turned toward my window. The silhouette, God, I swear it, shifted. Just slightly. The way someone does when they know they've been seen. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth, foamy toothpaste dribbling down my chin. It was the first time it had moved. And that meant it wasn't just some weird shadow effect or a forgotten mannequin. It was a person. Or something pretending to be. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every creak of my old house, every distant dog barking, every rustle of wind through the trees made my skin crawl. My brain buzzed with two warring instincts: ignore it and hope it goes away versus go over there and end this damn nightmare. At around 3 in the morning, I made my decision. I was going over there. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like an eternity, staring at the dark shape in the window across the street. My pulse drummed in my ears, every rational thought tangled in a thick knot of dread. A sane person would just shut their damn curtains and forget about it. But I wasn't sane, not anymore. The unease had twisted itself into something worse: obsession. I needed to know. Needed to see for myself. Because if I didn't, I'd never sleep again. So I threw on my jacket, shoved my feet into my sneakers, and grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand. The old Markham house sat directly across from me, its rotting front steps half hidden in the overgrown weeds. The town had always whispered stories about it, the way old houses collect rumors like dust. Some said it was haunted by Mr. Markham's ghost, pacing the attic where he supposedly ended his life. Others claimed it was cursed, that anyone who tried to live there ended up dead or missing. I'd never put much stock in that kind of talk before, but now, with that unmoving silhouette watching me, I wasn't so sure. The air outside was thick, humid, the scent of damp earth and distant rain pressing in around me. The street was eerily silent, not even the usual cricket chirps or rustling leaves. Just the low hum of a street lamp buzzing like a distant mosquito. I hesitated at the curb, glancing up one last time at my own window, as if half expecting to see myself still sitting there, trapped in some surreal nightmare. But no, my room was empty, and the figure still stood in the window across the street. I forced myself forward, every step up the cracked pavement tightening the coil of tension in my chest. The Markham house loomed larger with every inch I closed between us, its walls stained with water damage, the wood warping like old, melted wax. The porch groaned under my weight, the boards brittle and soft, and I had to step carefully to avoid falling through. The front door was ajar, just slightly, enough to make me pause. Had someone else been here? I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper, and nudged the door open with the toe of my shoe. It swung inward without a sound, revealing the yawning blackness of the front hall. I flicked on my flashlight, the beam cutting through floating dust motes, revealing walls lined with faded, peeling wallpaper and a staircase that led up into the shadows. The house smelled of mildew and something else, something faintly metallic, like rust or dried blood. I stepped inside, the floorboards shifting under me, the sound swallowed instantly by the oppressive quiet. The air was thick, stale, as if no one had breathed it in years. I moved deeper into the house, sweeping the flashlight across the ruined remains of furniture, an overturned chair, a shattered lamp, a broken mirror that reflected nothing but empty space. Each step I took felt wrong, like I was intruding on something that had been waiting, undisturbed, for too long. And then I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak from upstairs. My stomach lurched, a cold sweat prickling down my back. The beam of my flashlight trembled slightly as I aimed it up the staircase. The sound hadn't been the house settling, it was too rhythmic, too precise. It had been footsteps. I took a step back, my instinct screaming at me to turn around and get the hell out of there. But my feet didn't move. I stared up at the darkness above, frozen between terror and curiosity. If someone was up there, I had two choices, run now, or confront whatever had been watching me all these nights. And before I could decide, something moved. A shadow flickered just beyond the banister, quick, like a trick of the light, but real enough to send my heart into overdrive. My grip tightened on the flashlight, my breath shallow. Then, another creak. Closer. I finally found my legs and bolted. My feet pounded against the floor, my shoulder slamming into the front door as I practically threw myself outside. The air felt like ice against my sweat-dampened skin, my pulse a deafening roar in my ears. But I didn't stop, not until I was back on my porch, panting, hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into my front door lock. I stumbled inside, locking the door behind me with shaking fingers. My chest heaved, my brain struggling to make sense of what I'd just seen, what I'd felt. That wasn't a squatter. That wasn't some homeless guy taking shelter in an abandoned house. That was something else. And as I pressed my forehead against the door, I squeezed shut, trying to slow my breathing, I realized something that made my stomach drop like a lead weight. I had run. I had left. I had barely escaped. But when I looked across the street again, the figure was still standing in the window. I couldn't breathe. I stood frozen in my living room, my back still pressed against the door, sweat cooling against my skin. My lungs pulled in air in short, ragged bursts, my pulse hammering in my ears. Across the street, through the grimy glass of the Markham house, the silhouette was exactly where I'd left it, unmoving, unblinking. It didn't make sense. I had been in that house. I had heard something moving upstairs. I had felt the air shift, the way the house seemed to hold its breath. But if someone, or something, had been up there, how the hell was the figure still standing in the window? Unless... I forced myself to move, shuffling backward until my knees hit the couch. I sank down heavily, my fingers clutching at the fabric as if that would somehow tether me to reality. The flashlight was still clutched in my other hand, the sweat-slick plastic digging into my palm. My mind raced, grasping at any logical explanation, but none came. I had seen what I had seen. And now, all I could do was stare back. Minutes passed. Maybe more. The figure didn't move. I didn't either. Then, in a single, sickening instant, something changed. A flicker. A shift in the darkness. The shape in the window, no longer a rigid silhouette, tilted its head. I nearly dropped the flashlight. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. That slight, unnatural motion, like a puppet's strings had been jerked sideways. My breath hitched, and I swallowed the instinct to scream. I didn't know why. It wasn't doing anything but watching. Yet every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, to flee, to hide. But I couldn't look away. Then, the worst thing happened. The figure raised its hand. Slow. Deliberate. It lifted one arm, pale fingers barely visible against the darkness, and pressed its palm flat against the glass. My stomach twisted. Because I understood what it was doing. It was responding. Acknowledging me. It knew I was watching. I don't remember standing. I don't remember reaching for my phone. But suddenly, my fingers were fumbling across the screen, dialing before my brain even caught up. The line rang twice before a voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I was still staring at the window, my vision tunneling, my mind a churning, chaotic mess. Then, finally, I forced the words out. There's someone in the old Markham house. My voice came out thin, breathless. They've been standing in the window, watching me. I think they're... The words died in my throat. Because in that very moment, the figure moved again. Not a small shift this time. Not a slow, calculated motion. No. It stepped back from the window. Vanished into the darkness. The room swayed around me. My own breath roared in my ears. Sir? The dispatcher's voice was tinny, distant. Sir, are you still there? I forced myself to blink. Swallowed the dry knot in my throat. They're gone, I whispered. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Officers are on their way. But I barely heard her. My mind was stuck on that single, horrifying realization: the figure had left the window. And now, I had no idea where it was. I don't remember hanging up, don't remember setting my phone down. My body moved on autopilot, my feet carrying me backward until I hit the far wall. My gaze stayed locked on the Markham house, waiting, no, dreading, whatever would come next. But the window remained empty. Just a rectangle of inky blackness, hollow and still. Minutes passed. My pulse refused to settle. Then, something new caught my eye. A faint glow. A reflection, flickering against the glass. My own window. The realization came slowly, like a venomous drip into my bloodstream. My body turned before my brain had fully processed what I was about to see. And then I saw it. Saw them. A reflection in the glass. But not just mine. There, behind me. Standing in the doorway. Watching.